Hi, good afternoon. My name is Scott Peterson. I'm the Manager of Media Relations and Strategic Partnerships here in the Office of County Executive. I want to welcome you to the County Executive's weekly media briefing. Thank you for joining us a day earlier than normal. And today on our media briefing, Mark will be joined by Dr. Earl Stoddard to discuss the impacts of the DC government federalization of the the federal government's take over the Metropolitan Police Department. So we always have Earl on, but today we'll put Earl in a special category. Mark, if you want to turn it over to you now, and I hope you're having a very good week.
So far, so good.
Mm.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. And I'll start by stating the obvious. I think everybody knows yesterday, President Donald Trump placed the district's Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control and deployed National Guard troops to multiply the police force in the nation's capital. President Trump claims he's responding to a supposed public safety emergency. Part of his plan is to move all the homeless out of D.C. and far from the capital. But at this point, we don't know where that place is. We don't know how he's going to do it. And his plan does not seem to actually include providing housing for homeless people. From the county's perspective, we're concerned that more homeless people will be pushed across the border into the county and put further stress on our existing resources without the federal government providing the funding we would need to handle this addition. He says this is necessary to combat crime and clean up the city. Not surprisingly, because facts are always surprising when you're dealing with him. Data shows that crime is not out of control, and this year DC hit a 30-year low in violent crime. He threatened the same type of action elsewhere, mentioning New York City, Baltimore, and Oakland. President Trump has taken advantage of the fact that DC is not a state and claiming emergency powers to federalize the local police department, despite an apparent lack of emergency conditions. DC is our neighbor, and we have to consider how this is going to impact us here in Montgomery County. The idea of using the National Guard for everyday policing brings up many concerns that we've never considered. It has never been the practice or policy of the federal government to deploy troops for policing purposes. National Guard, people who have regular civilian jobs, are not trained to be police officers. They don't know the laws or rules of policing, let alone the specific laws and rules in the District of Columbia. What they are trained for is combat, not police work. And if this weren't enough, Trump's plans to extend his overhaul to cash bail policies and replacing DC area judges who he doesn't like. And all of that may wind up impacting us. He even appears to be creating new criminal statutes on the fly, declaring that those who even think about destroying a statue or monument will go to jail for 10 years. It's especially alarming because one of the statues he's actually restoring to DC is that of a Confederate general, an actual traitor, and a supporter of slavery. Personally, I find it disgusting. But how is all this legal to invent these crimes? People are going to go to jail for thinking about something now? He has no answer to legality, and I don't think he cares about legality. And yet this is the same person who pardoned the criminals for attacking the Capitol building and attacking police officers and actually killing one of them on January 6th. Here's what we do know. Montgomery County leads our region in offering supportive services and long-term solutions to those experiencing homelessness. We built a large permanent shelter during COVID pandemic to give men and women more options for finding temporary shelter while we help them find a long-term fix. We're doing a lot, but our resources aren't unlimited, and they certainly aren't sufficient to address the president dumping more homeless people into the county. As I've mentioned before, the annual homeless count, which occurred in January, found that we've seen the number of homeless families jump. This pressure from the federal government to make homelessness a crime is not going to help. I hope that the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments can help coordinate more help now that homelessness is in the crosshairs of this administration. Between Maryland and Virginia, there's an opportunity to offer humanity and dignity in the absence of such empathy in the District of Columbia. Montgomery County's continuum of care is a coordinated system aimed at reducing homelessness. Our services to end and prevent homelessness, part of the county's Department of Health and Human Services, has a common vision: access by all people to safe, affordable housing and opportunities to improve the quality of life. We want to make homelessness brief, rare, and non-recurring. And we've been making good progress on this throughout most of the year through our Sustainable Housing Assistance Rental Program, otherwise called SHARP. SHARP uses a data-driven approach to provide housing and support services for individuals and families. Our Department of Health and Human Services plays a central role, providing integrated programs like behavioral health care, behavioral health, and child and family services, with an ongoing focus on improving access, identifying gaps, and enhancing coordination for individuals with complex needs. This is a comprehensive, compassionate, and strategic framework, a world away from simply moving people out of sight. This is all new and unprecedented and unpredictable. Using the military for routine crime enforcement is a dangerous and slippery slope, particularly when we have a president who's a convicted felon and who thinks he can invent crimes out of his own imagination. I want to bring the county's Assistant Chief Administrative Officer, Dr. Earl Stoddard, who works on the county's public safety departments, including our police department. And Earl, it's all yours.
Yeah, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to give a couple additional updates. We actually just wrapped up a call with the governor's office and our counterparts from Prince George's County to discuss what we expect some of the impacts on the state of Maryland from this federalization of the DC police force, as well as the National Guard activation in the district. Get some clarity about what legal authorities this gives them, both within the district and in the areas surrounding. And I think the big takeaway that we have is I think we're all sort of in a sort of wait and see posture, because it's not entirely clear that there is a strong strategy associated with this activation, nor are there any really in terms of policy documents suggesting what the changes will imply, both for what's going to happen in the district and what's likely to spill over potentially into other jurisdictions. And so we've gotten a lot of questions from both our residents who work or spend time in the district about what it means for them, as well as what it means along our border lines. And the reality is we just don't know. This was not something that was known to the District of Columbia, having spoken to counterparts over there over the weekend, nor was this something that there's been clear direction even provided to the National Guard at the time about what exactly their mission would be. I know the Secretary of Defense was on the news last night suggesting that it would be as a force multiplier, which has a meaning to those who work within operational spaces. But whether that meaning applies in this situation is obviously up for interpretation. Now, I also do know that, as the county executive alluded to, we've been focused a lot on the homeless segment, not understanding necessarily the way that they would view the removal of people from, would this be more focused on the core of the district and therefore they'd be pushing people to the outer limits of the district itself, or would they be pushing them entirely out of the District of Columbia? That is entirely unclear at this point. Obviously, our homeless providers, both in Montgomery County, but most of our nonprofits do work across borders themselves. And so they are our eyes and ears, as it were, about what's happening in the district and what we're likely to see in Montgomery County. It was a big provider meeting with our Services to Prevent Homelessness, and I know Ms. Christine Hong can maybe speak to that a little bit later if we have questions about that. But I do know that we are actively engaged with our community partners who do lots of work in this space to understand exactly what's happening on the ground and how people are going to, vote with their feet, as it were, whether they're going to choose to leave the district itself and come to places like Montgomery County or Northern Virginia, and what that will look like and for how long and what their needs will be and all of those things. That's sort of what we're trying to get a pulse of. We did have a meeting with our police chief, Chief Yamada, yesterday, and his leadership, as well as our county attorney, to understand sort of any implications of what may happen with the federalization of the DC police. I think one thing that's particularly concerning to us is, as the president referenced in his comments yesterday, their integration into immigration enforcement and how that's likely to affect our partnerships on task forces and other things with our police department. And we just don't know. We've been told at the ground level that not to anticipate huge changes on things that we are collaborative with the Metropolitan Police Department on. But again, we have to take that with the appropriate skepticism, considering there just aren't plans or procedures that have been defined about what changes are occurring. And so we have to leave it at as to what that may mean for us operationally. And so I will stop there. And I think obviously there may be questions that members of the media have on this topic.
Thanks, Earl. If again, members of the media, we'll take questions on this specific topic now, and then if you have off-topic questions, we will wait to the end after Mark gives a couple more remarks and our HHS team reports out. Hands up for any questions. Scott Gelman, WTOP. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thank you all. Just two follow-ups to what was just said. The first of which, the county executive mentioned concerns about an possible increase in homeless migration into Montgomery County. If you could describe a little bit more about what specific concerns you all are hearing from those organizations about resources, where they might go, or things that they're doing to prepare in anticipation of that.
So
thank you, Scott. And just FYI, I just want to remind Earl that Mark, Christine Hong is also on to address any of these questions as well. So sorry.
maybe I'll say something briefly and defer to Christine, but we share a border with DC. We have a major shelter at the district line in Silver Spring. It is easy for people to get to our other shelters because we always see people showing up from other jurisdictions. This isn't the first time people from DC cross border and come to the county, but our shelter spaces are full, and we serve a lot of meals, and we have very long lines, and we have people still living in encampments and on the street, and this is just going to magnify the problems we have to deal with, whether it's providing additional housing or it's feeding people. We're not going to let people starve. So the nature of who we are means this is going to add an additional burden to what we need to do here. You simply can't walk away and say, you kicked out of DC, Montgomery County, not going to do anything. Good luck. That's not what we do. It would not be the humane thing to do. And so I don't anticipate us getting an easy way out. And I'll let Christine maybe talk a little bit more about what she thinks about programmatic impacts.
Thanks, Mr. County Executive. And I want to thank you also for taking the lead in our region as far as ensuring that we in Montgomery County continue to provide supportive services, shelter, and housing to people experiencing homelessness in a way that is with compassion, dignity, and respect. And we are very focused on continuing those efforts. We anticipate that we will see an increase in unsheltered homelessness in Montgomery County as a result of people leaving the district, people who are unsheltered there. And so we did have, as Dr. Stoddard mentioned, a meeting with our service providers for outreach services, emergency shelter, our drop-in centers, both for people in Silver Spring, but also for our youth in Wheaton, and also our crisis center, our prevention team, and our diversion services. So they are all preparing for a possible increase in people we may see in need of services. And what I've asked of them is to track the number of people who are coming from the district so we can have a sense of the need and assess that so that Montgomery County can be prepared with a response. And we know that Montgomery County cannot alone meet the needs of everyone in the region. And so we are also working with our partners collaboratively. We share data across the district and Prince George's County so that we can work together on coordinating our services. So this is exactly the type of situation where that would be very valuable so that we can talk about the impacts, impending impacts of the changes made.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, Christine, could you please also just say your title for the record?
Sure. My title is Chief of Services to End and Prevent Homelessness with the Department of Health and Human Services in Montgomery County.
Thank you, Christine. Thanks for all the work that you do. Any other questions on this issue before we move on? Please put up your hand. I will.
Susan.
Oh, Suzanne Pollock. Suzanne.
Yes, hi, thanks. Can we get a little bit more specifically? You say you're gearing up. is there emergency money already being set aside? Are there more looking for more places, or is there anything specific being done? Or are you just waiting to find out?
Well, but
We
go ahead.
maybe
Yeah.
County Executive, feel free to
No,
respond
go
to
ahead.
that.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
We're preparing, we work in a data-driven way. And so in order to know if and when we need to respond, we need data to understand what the need is. We are preparing, however, I don't want to say specifically here because we don't yet know what the need is. We're speculating at this point because there's so much uncertainty about the plans coming from the federal government to move people out of the district and how they would do that, where they would do that. But yes, we are planning. I'm just not prepared to speak specifically about what we're doing at this point. Although if Dr. Stoddard or the county executive would like to comment.
Yeah, I think there was something you said to me yesterday, Christine, that when we were having a conversation, I think is super important. You know, when part of the work of outreach with these individuals and their families, friends, et cetera, is, you know, there's times during the summer where individuals who are homeless choose to be on the street homeless. They're more comfortable in that setting. But given the pressures that are being applied under this unique situation, they may feel differently. So you may be re-engaging with clients who had already expressed a preference, but you may be engaging with them under a new set of circumstances in which they might feel differently about their circumstances, and their friends and family might feel differently about their receptiveness to having someone in the household too. So it's a lot of the same kinds of work that you would do under other circumstances, but given the pressures being applied on these individuals and their families, they may make different choices than they might otherwise make it. So we're really gearing up to sort of almost reassess those individuals who we work with some regularity, or who our partners in the district work with some regularity, to reassess their needs and their willingness to participate in various different types of programs.
Totally agree. And Dr. Stoddard is referring to our diversion efforts, which with every individual that we work with, we attempt to connect them to existing supports, whether that's family or friends, and we can provide a limited amount of financial assistance to help that household taking in the individual needing housing. And that's something that sometimes the answer is no when we ask, can you take this person in? But we are urging families and friends to please take in anyone who is open to staying with them temporarily. Montgomery County can help with that conversation and provide some financial assistance. And this is definitely a time where it's safer to be in housing than outside. So we would urge people to consider that. And I appreciate you raising that, Dr. Stoddard, as one of the many services we provide.
Okay. Any other questions on this issue? I don't see. Oh, one more from Scott Gelman, WTOP.
Thank you. Just wanted to also ask about something that was raised a few minutes ago. It was said that the changes in DC yesterday may not change the way that you all in Montgomery County are interacting with DC police. I'm just wondering if someone could elaborate a little bit more about what the impact of that is. Is there going to be a new liaison you're speaking to, and how that plays a role in obviously one of the many events that you collaborate with MPD on?
Yeah, we've had various both direct and indirect interactions with our counterparts in the district, including in the Metropolitan Police Department. And what we've gotten from all of those interactions is that the new administrator, he's obviously the acting DEA administrator, we're just newly appointed DEA administrator, Tom Cole. He actually comes from Virginia, has a great deal of experience in public safety generally, but you know, I think his experience in public safety has allowed him to come in. My understanding, and this is all, you know, we're getting this second and third hand, is that when he came in yesterday, he was much more reasonable with the command staff at Metropolitan Police Department, saying, "Hey, I'm here to make things better. We're gonna operate more efficiently. Tell me how you operate." There wasn't we didn't get the impression from our counterparts that there was a come in and scorched earth approach to procedure, policy, and practice. And so we just don't know what we don't know. And I think that's the problem and the challenge that we face is we which is why we're really just sort of trying to get a pulse of what's happening on the ground, have more regular check-ins with our police department and them observing and their interactions with Metropolitan Police Departments, just make sure there's nothing that is unusual or potentially problematic for us from a policy or other practice standpoint. But so far, what we're hearing and seeing is not a dramatic shift in policy and procedure. That may come, but I think, I don't even want to say we're optimistic. I think we're just sort of watching with intensity what actually happens, and we're not yet seeing dramatic and or hyper concerning changes, but we are essentially 24 hours into a significant shift in federal policy. And I think we're sort of just watching with anticipation about what could happen.
Can I just follow up quickly?
Sure, go ahead.
So, Dr. Stoddard, I just want to make sure from what you're describing, and again, I know you heard this second and third hand, but yesterday it was said by DC's mayor and several other folks that Chief Pamela Smith was still in charge of the Metropolitan Police Department. It sounds like you're describing that may not be the case from what you're hearing.
So no, that actually is my understanding, is that Chief Smith is still, effectively the administrator from again, this is all coming from, again, various conversations that we've had with different people, is the administrator came into the building yesterday and essentially introduced himself and expressed that he was there to make things work better, but not to come in and overturn the apple cart, as it were. And that is supported by what we are seeing on the ground so far, is that there has not been a dramatic shift in the on the ground practice. Now that, again, that may come over days, weeks to come, but we are not seeing it yet. And I think that was the thing. We didn't know what we were going to see. And so that was the initial concern, is what if we did see dramatic changes? Would we have to pull back from these, we have task forces to address stolen cars, because obviously stolen cars end up in all of the neighboring jurisdictions. When they're taken from Montgomery County or taken from the district, they end up in Montgomery County, vice versa. And so obviously we have these regional task forces on crime that we were concerned were going to be altered dramatically. And we have MOUs with the district police department around how we co-respond, when we support. And I think we have concerns, but thus far we have not seen, again, we're 24 hours into this, we have not seen dramatic shifts that have us hyper concerned about whether we are going to be able to maintain our ongoing day-to-day operational working relationships at this stage.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank
All right. I think that's all the questions on this subject. Thank you very much, Earl and Christine Hong, for your insight. And Mark, if you want to continue on with the rest of your briefing notes.
Sure. On a lighter and brighter note, I want to remind everyone that the county fair will run through this Saturday night. Tonight through Thursday, the fair is open till 11. On Friday and Saturday nights, the gates stay open till midnight. There's plenty of time to enjoy the fair, including rodeos, monster truck shows, and a demolition derby. Free entertainment includes a comedy hypnotist, stilt walkers, chainsaw carving, and live music. Kids under 11 under get in for free. Tickets for adults are $18 at the gate. And you can save a little bit of money if you buy your ticket online for less than $15. Parking is on site, but we're encouraging people to take advantage of the free parking and shuttle buses from the Montgomery College, Rockville, and Germantown campuses. Shuttles start running 30 minutes before the fair opens and go until closing each night. And in every summer, our county fair is a place where people of all ages come together to have fun, celebrate our agricultural heritage, and enjoy time with family and friends. It is pretty interesting to go out there to see all of the animals that people bring in. There was a cake auction the other night, which brought in astounding prices for cakes. There's lots of good food, lots of unhealthy food, but good food, the kind of thing you see at a fair. That's why we go to these things. So it's a really fun place to be, and I enjoyed my visit up there, and I think a lot of people would find it fun. Also want to remind everyone that now through Saturday, August 16th, you can save money during Shop Maryland Tax Free Week. The tax holiday allows families to stretch their dollars, especially as we near the start of the school year. And here's how it works. Clothing, footwear. It's like sweater and clothing and footwear. I don't know why I like sweaters is next to footwear. Sweaters, shirts, and dresses are all priced up to $100 each, are tax-free. Other clothing including robes, underwear, belts, and shoes and boots. The first $40 of a backpack or book bag purchase is also tax-free. So if you buy a backpack for $60, you only pay sales tax on 20 of it. Online purchases can qualify also, as long as you pay for the item during tax-free week and either receive it or during the week, or the retailer accepts your order for immediate shipment. And this is a good way to save on back-to-school essentials and support our local retailers. So if you're shopping this week for this kind of stuff, this is a good time to buy it and save a little bit of money on your taxes. This week, I'm going down to Mako conference, and I want to thank Comptroller Brooke Learman for her leadership and advocacy for many things, including tax-free week. I also want to recognize the work of her office for their reporting of potential financial challenges to our state, things we're facing due to the displacement of our federal workforce. And we're going to put it in the chat in the June report from the Comptroller's office, and that's a good reference. There are a couple of slides from her office's most recent report that I wanted to share. And the first is a slide showing the differential salaries between the private sector and federal sector employees. And as you can see, there's a significant gap between private sector pay and government pay, and it repeats itself in Maryland, Virginia, and the District of Columbia, and as well as in the United States. So these jobs are high value, and they not only obviously benefit the people who make those salaries, but the revenues, the income tax revenues that come from high value jobs help the county. These are locations below that are employment centers throughout the state. And as you can see, Montgomery County and Prince George's County have more federal workers than the rest of the state combined. Those are our bar charts there. And it's the number of, the dark blue number is the number of federal jobs in the county. And the light blue numbers are the number of federal employees residing in the county. So you can see Montgomery County has the largest number of jobs and people residing within the county. We are having this media briefing earlier than normal because starting tomorrow I'll be at Mako. And one of the big issues down in Mako is going to be the revenue and budget challenges from the federal government's impacts and what they're going to be on our local budgets and the state budget. And I'm going to be part of a panel at Mako with Attorney General Brown, Commerce Secretary Coker, and Wicomico County Executive Giordano to discuss these issues. This panel will be moderated by Baltimore County Executive Klausmeier and should be a well-attended session. I look forward to sharing how our county has been working collaboratively with the state as well as with WorkSource Montgomery and our business community, and mobilize Montgomery County outreach programs to try to make a difference and help people who are facing loss of jobs. Our region's had a long history of big reliance on the federal government. We used to consider ourselves inflation-proof and recession-proof because companies might, grow, and they might shrink, they might close, and the federal government didn't do any of that stuff. So those jobs are rock solid, and that was a big part of our economy. Less so now, and that's one of the reasons that we're working and have been working to diversify our economy and capitalize on our strengths in life sciences and related industries. Without actively trying to drive some of these things, we simply will not be able to replace the job loss. And so, we're more determined than ever to double down on our work to try to recruit more companies to come here and to be a place that can be seen as more than just a government town and more than just a life sciences space. We are going to continue to push hard on life sciences, but there are other opportunities that we're taking advantage of as well. Last week, the Secretary of Health and Human Services dropped another bombshell, canceling nearly $500 million in federal funding for future vaccine development. target here is vaccines developed through mRNA technology. Moderna is one of the many companies to use mRNA to produce a bird flu vaccine that was defunded by the Trump administration earlier this year. Bird flu is not yet plaguing us, at least the human part of our population, but it is anticipated that there's a good chance that the virus, bird flu, will become another one of those pandemic flus that affects a larger portion of the population, and we're going to need a vaccine. And dropping research on a vaccine is a serious mistake. Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. supports this decision by claiming that, and this is a quote, "The data shows these vaccines fail to protect effectively against upper respiratory infections like COVID and the flu." And he further claims that mRNA vaccines can help encourage new mutations and can actually prolong pandemics as the virus constantly mutates to escape the protective effects of the vaccine. Obviously, Mr. Kennedy was asleep during the pandemic because the virus is mutating constantly without the vaccine. It was one of the things about this virus that made it very challenging. But in the larger sense, health experts agree that his position does not make sense. We have clear evidence that mRNA COVID vaccines are effective at reducing the severity of infection and have saved tens of millions of lives. We also know that influenza viruses mutate every year, regardless of which type of vaccine technology is used. One of the great advantages of mRNA vaccines is that it supports faster identification of an effective treatment and significantly faster production than other methods. And this allows manufacturers to be more specific to the currently circulating virus strains. The speed of mRNA production means the COVID vaccines were available to the public 3 to 6 months earlier than a traditional production would have made them available. And it significantly reduced infections and saves lives. I mean, I just go back to our own experience during COVID. Once those vaccines were out there, once people started getting vaccinated, the visits to the hospitals and the deaths dropped. And it was, the most important thing that happened during that period was helping us get a handle on the spread of the disease and the seriousness of the disease. Our research and medical communities are opposed to and deeply concerned about these cuts. They note that these kinds of advancements in medicine were always funded and encouraged, no matter which political party held office, and that's until now. The sad truth, though, is that it's not just a bad decision, but also a really dangerous one. Removing investments in mRNA technology will mean the U.S. will no longer be the international leader in this crucial biotech field and will make us dependent on developments made in other countries that continue to invest heavily in mRNA research. This is not only going to mean the loss of skilled jobs within the U.S. biotech sector, it's also going to mean that we'll no longer have the infrastructure to respond to emerging threats or producing life-saving treatments developed outside our borders. We're reverting to an outdated system for vaccination, which puts lives at risk. These cuts severely hampered the United States' ability to respond swiftly to future pandemics or emerging pathogens. Further impact is that the work to develop potential vaccines for some cancers will also stop. It's a steep price to pay when the argument for canceling it is bogus. Secretary Kennedy criticized the COVID-19 vaccines that were developed because many people still got sick. The purpose of the vaccine was not to totally block the virus, it was to keep people from dying. It was meant to ensure that it was not as lethal to those who contracted it. And on that grading scale, it performed extremely well. I am sure most of us would happily make that trade we had to make for a mild case of COVID as opposed to winding up dead. I think mildly sick is generally preferable to the other outcome. Before the vaccines, our hospitals were overwhelmed by patients, many of whom were seriously ill. Hospitalization numbers went down once people started getting vaccinated. Imagine if we had relied on the old system of producing a vaccine. We could still be dealing with this as a national health crisis today. don't believe what you hear from the secretary. I mean, that just ought to be a mantra that goes next to his name, because if he's saying it, it's probably not true. He's making up facts to fit his narrative, and he's leading into the growing skepticism of vaccines. Even President Trump's former Surgeon General came out against his plan, crediting mRNA vaccines for saving more than 2 million lives and saying, quote, people are going to die. It's not a safe way to go forward for our nation. And now, before we answer your questions, I'd like to allow my health team a chance to share any updates they have.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Well, while we're on the topic of respiratory diseases, I think most of us are aware that the summer wave of COVID is continuing. We continue to see the test positivity and wastewater surveillance data showing that the number of transmissions are still increasing right now. The number of hospitalizations, though, remains rather limited. In Montgomery County, we have 24 patients in our hospitals with a COVID diagnosis. Again, this is far lower than where we were before we had these vaccines. So those have certainly helped us get to the point where we have far fewer people being hospitalized and far fewer people dying from this disease. Again, we'll encourage people to get the updated vaccine, particularly if they have high vulnerability because of weakened immune systems, either due to age or underlying conditions, when that's released this fall. But we'll share more information as it comes out. And again, we appreciate the independent medical community who are weighing in on all of these things and helping to make sure that there's accurate scientific information for local and state public health departments to make these decisions.
Thank you,
Happy
Mr.
to take
O'Donnell.
any questions. Yeah.
I don't have anything else to add. I think you've said enough for both of us.
Okay, well, we'll put it to open questions.
I have one more
Dr.
comment.
Sauer, do you want to-
Scott, I have a sort of unique perspective on the mRNA vaccine technology that the county executive alluded to. I've talked about this previously, but it's been a few years. My graduate laboratory at the University of Pennsylvania, where I got my PhD, was actually the laboratory of Dr. Drew Weissman, who last year, 2023, received the Nobel Prize for Medicine for the development of the mRNA vaccine technology. I got my PhD more than 20 or about 20 years ago at this point. And so when I was in the laboratory, they were actively working on mRNA vaccines, and it was based on a whole bunch of work that had been done in the years and decades preceding the work that was done in the Weissman laboratory. And I sat on the bench immediately next to Dr. Caitlin Carrico, who shared that the Nobel Prize for Medicine for that year. And I have the unique exposure of like, this is not technology that is new. It has certainly improved dramatically over the last decade or so, but it is not new technology. And the notion that this administration continues to lean on that this is somehow abhorrent or, rapidly developed or improperly tested technology just does not bear out in any review of the history of this technology. And furthermore, I would say this is akin to saying that, when papyrus came out, you were going to fight back against papyrus if you're the stone tablet producing person. And that's a lot like, this is a new technology. It has an absolute wonderful utility. It's a rapidly evolving technology, and one that not investing in is just imprudent on the part of our government. And it's all based on phony perceptions of critiques of a science that just frankly are based on a whole bunch of myths as opposed to actual data science or any real critical analysis of it. So I really wanted to add on to what the county executive said about how silly this notion that we're going to target this particular technology because of a perception that exists within a conspiracy theory laden assessment.
To add on to that, Dr. Stoddard, when we have our next emerging threat that requires a quick response, a quick therapy that can come out, that mRNA can be that therapy, we won't have an infrastructure in the United States to build that. We will have to rely on purchasing that from other countries. We won't have the personnel with the experience of working within the United States because we won't have invested in it. And that's deeply concerning.
So I'll add, since all of the other health officials weighed in, my rhetorical question is, how can you make America healthy again when you take away the resources and the tools that it prided itself on during COVID?
All right. Well, thank you all, and thank you, Earl, for utilizing your doctorate towards this conversation. I appreciate that's an amazing insight you have. Any questions from on any other this issue or any other issues facing the county? Please raise your hand, and I'll try to call on you. Give it a couple more seconds here. Oh, Suzanne, there you are, and Scott Gelman again. Suzanne, go ahead for Suzanne Pollock, MCM.
Yes. Dr. Stoddard, as long as you're here, I was just wondering if there's any updates on possible ICE raids, or have they been around in the county? Are you still meeting and learning about that or on a regular basis?
Yeah, so ICE has been, and I don't want to, I'm going to be careful how I say this. ICE has been a little bit, we were at a point where we were asking ICE about their activities on a near daily basis, and they started to respond and essentially, hey, this is a little much. So we've been had a little less contact with ICE than we had for a period of time there. Right after the I don't even like to call it the big beautiful bill or whatever the funding mechanism was that really surged their funding. There was a lot of public concern, questions about it, and we were engaging with ICE very regularly. They not inappropriately, I think, said, hey, this is getting a little much in terms of having confirmed activities every single day. That said, what we are seeing on the ground is not a significant shift in our experience in Montgomery County. ICE is still operating on a regular, I would say, multi-times a week basis in Montgomery County. What we're seeing continues to look a lot to us like targeted enforcement. However, I will say that we are seeing an increase both in the collateral detentions, not significant in terms of, it's not like it's doubled or tripled or quadrupled over the last couple months, but we're seeing more collaterals be picked up. And I think that's in part because they have more detention capacity within the overall system that has been funded as well. I don't anticipate we're going to see a real dramatic shift until they're able to hire and train up and get allocated some of these quote unquote 10,000 that ICE is trying to hire across the country. That would obviously lead to a surge in available agents in Montgomery County and in the state of Maryland. And we would anticipate that we'd see an increase in activity that would be consummate with that increase in personnel. And so we're thinking, even under the best case scenario, that's 3, 4, 5, 6 months potentially of hire, train, deploy, etc. Those resources, and we go up from there. So that's sort of, I think, our best summary of what we're seeing right now.
Just one more question of the ones that are happening on a somewhat regular basis. Are they in particular area or particular festivals or?
No, as I said, they're largely targeted against individuals at this point, meaning they're going after, a person and whomever they interact in the course of looking for that person. If they interact with someone else who's undocumented or of a different immigration status, that person may also be picked up. We have certainly heard some reports of persons out, going to court hearings being picked up after their court hearing ends. But again, they're not, camping out at the courthouse every day, screening anyone who comes in the building, for example. They're looking for individuals, but they're looking for them in a whole bunch of different environments. And I will also note that we are hearing much more regularly that the individuals that they do pick up really only have immigration violations. They don't have other criminal records upon which, in the beginning, I think the quote was, the worst go first. I think we are past the period where that can really be reasonably applied. Not, again, some people that they pick up will have criminal records, just a smaller percentage as we move forward month by month will have any other criminal record besides an immigration violation.
Thank you.
Scott Gelman, WTOP, your hand's back up.
Thanks. And just wanted to ask, Mr. County Executive, I know you put out a statement early last week regarding the school background check process
Sure.
and the OIG report. Just wanted to see what the status of all of that is as you understand it. And Dr. Taylor has also been a bit critical of some of the aspects of that OIG report. Just wondering if you've had conversations with him or what your response to some of those critiques might be.
I'm not going to respond to the critiques. I mean, something went seriously wrong, and a lot of people should have gotten their background checks, and it wasn't done. What I can tell you is everybody's cooperating. We're working with the state. We're trying to get them to put more resources into this so we can make the cleanup as quick as possible. We'll need temporary staff. We don't need ongoing staff in order to move in that direction. So we're doing everything we can do within our own resources and resources from the state to help the school system get themselves back where they're supposed to be.
Scott Gelman, is that good?
Yes, thank you.
I do not see any other hands raised. And we're coming up on an hour. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. If there are any other media related questions or follow-ups, please feel free to reach out to me and I will happy to accommodate and take care of it. So thank you, everybody. And I hope everyone has a great week.
I just want to do a huge shout out to all of them for everything that they've been going through.
Yes.
You know, we've been able to, at the county level and at the state level, provide some grant money to our businesses. It is, you know, is not enough. We need to continue